the sparkle and the silence. The sky over São Paulo was grey that afternoon, as if even it could sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. In the heart of the city, the old Imperial Theatre was getting ready for a historic night. In less than 24 hours, its stage would welcome Isabel Carter, the most famous international pop artist of the decade, known for a voice that gave people goosebumps and a beauty that could freeze cameras. On the other side of this dazzling spectacle, far from the lights and golden dressing rooms, was Raphael, or as everyone there called him, Rafa from cleaning. He was 24, his tan skin marked by the sun, black hair always tucked under a simple cap, and light brown eyes that held a sweetness hard to find in such a fast-paced world. His sneakers were worn out, his jeans faded, but every step he took in that theatre was careful, almost as if he respected the ground where so many stars had walked. Rafa didn't speak English. He barely spoke Portuguese properly, one of those who learned more on the streets than in school. But he carried a rare kind of intelligence, the ability to notice what eyes don't show, to understand the silences most people ignore. Isabel, on the other hand, came from a completely different world. The daughter of powerful business people, raised between singing lessons and private coaches, she had it all. Money, fame, followers, but few knew the weight that came with all that shine. She barely slept, was watched constantly, and in recent years she no longer knew if she sang out of passion or obligation. Deep down, she felt like a butterfly trapped in a glass dome, admired but lonely. The first time she saw Rafa was by accident. She was walking down the backstage hallway, still groggy with sleep, when she noticed a young man crouched down, scrubbing the floor hard. He didn't see her, didn't even seem to hear her footsteps. He was lost in his work, old headphones. Until the song leaking out was one of her own, and that made her stop. For a moment, Isabel forgot the schedules, the rehearsals, the managers. She just watched him in silence, as if seeing something new, something real. That moment was brief, but unforgettable. The next day, she saw him again, and again after that. She started to notice how gently he moved, how respectfully he treated everyone, even those who mistreated him. And there were many. Some techs laughed at him for the way he spoke. Some makeup artists whispered when he walked by. And then there was Isabel's manager, David, a cold, controlling man who couldn't stand the idea of her even looking at someone from that level. But Isabel looked, more and more. She didn't understand why. Maybe it was the way he smiled even when ignored, or the way his eyes lit up when he walked near the stage. It was as if Rafa carried something she had lost, purity, truth, hope, and Rafa, he could hardly believe it. The most famous woman in the world had greeted him. Then she asked his name, and the next day she smiled at him. He didn't know what that meant. He didn't know how to act, and deep down he was scared, because he knew that world wasn't his, that in a world of spotlights and shine, he was just a shadow sweeping the floor. But life loves to surprise us sometimes. What started as shy glances soon became short conversations. Isabel began sneaking away from her team to sit in the corner of the stage with Rafa and listen to his stories. He spoke slowly, embarrassed by his mistakes, but she listened closely, laughed at his jokes, even learned some Portuguese from him, and he, little by little, tried to understand her English, even if only through the sparkle in her eyes. The theatre became a refuge, a place where opposite worlds met without judgment, but the closer they grew, the stronger the forces, trying to pull them apart. Humiliation, misunderstandings, obstacles that seemed impossible to overcome. And through it all, one truth began to emerge. Sometimes love doesn't show up where it's most convenient, but where it's most unexpected. And it's up to each person to decide whether they have the courage to face the impossible, or walk away from something only the heart can understand. Chapter 1. Between Lights and Silences. The morning was muggy, with the sun struggling to break through the heavy clouds hanging over São Paulo. Outside the Imperial Theatre, a line of fans had already formed, even though the big show was still 2 days away. Some held colorful signs, others blasted Isabel Carter's biggest hits from speakers at full volume. Hysteria had taken over the sidewalk, but inside, far from the screams and camera flashes, Rafa was on his knees, scrubbing away the scuff marks left on the stage by the previous night's tech rehearsal. He worked in silence, wiping the floor as if he were polishing a diamond, not out of obligation, but out of respect. To him, the stage was sacred. It was where dreams found their sound. Every now and then, he glanced up at the spotlights hanging from the ceiling, wondering what it would be like to stand up there and be applauded. Then he'd laugh at himself, like someone waking from a sweet, impossible dream, and go back to scrubbing. At that moment, Isabel was in the dressing room. Sitting in front of a massive mirror surrounded by lights, she had 2 makeup artists working on her face while a stylist adjusted her dress, but she wasn't paying attention to any of it. Her eyes were fixed on the reflection, more precisely on her own eyes. They looked tired, still beautiful, yes, but sad, as if behind all the shine there was a girl silently screaming, "Focus, Isabel. Final rehearsal today. No distractions, okay?" said David, her manager, barging into the room. She didn't reply, just took a deep breath and nodded, without much conviction. A little later on stage, the sound of footsteps echoed against the wooden floor. Rafa, holding a bucket in one hand and a rag in the other, was trying to quietly slip away when she entered. He tried to avoid her gaze, but it was too late. Isabel saw him. "Hey, you again?" she said with a soft smile. She wore tight black pants, an oversized t-shirt and sneakers, so different from the glamorous image the world knew. She looked lighter, more human. Rafa swallowed hard. Shy, he gave her a small nod and a quiet, "Good morning." She stepped closer. "Your name is Rafa, right?" He smiled, surprised. "Yeah, you remember my name?" "Of course I do. You're always here," she said, pointing to the freshly cleaned floor. "I think this stage shines more because of you." Rafa looked down, unsure of what to say. That woman, so far from his world, was talking to him as if they were equals, as if there weren't cameras, fame, or fortune between them. "Do you like music?" she asked, curious. He nodded eagerly. "A lot. I listen to yours every day, but I like sertanejo too, and old stuff. Like Legion, you know." Isabel laughed. "I don't know much of that, but maybe you can show me sometime." It was the first of many conversations. In the following days, as rehearsals grew more intense and the hallways buzzed with tech crews, dancers and producers, Isabel always found a way to cross paths with Rafa. Sometimes just 5 minutes. Other times 20. They'd sit backstage, share a snack, exchange simple words and intense glances. She learned that he lived with his mom and 2 siblings in a small shack in the East Zone, that he took 2 buses and a subway to get there, that he never had a present father, that he dreamed of doing something bigger, but life had only ever made room for survival. He learned that she hated crowds, that she missed eating street food, that she couldn't remember the last time she had a full day off. That one day, she wanted to sing just for love, not for a contract, but not everyone was okay with them getting close. David, her manager, started noticing Isabel slipping away. One day, he found her sitting backstage with Rafa. His expression changed immediately. He looked at the young man like trash in the middle of luxury. "Isabel, I need to speak with you." "Privately," he said firmly. She stood up, uncomfortable. So did Rafa. But David ignored him, didn't even glance his way. The next day, Rafa was reassigned to a different area of the theater, far from the stage. His supervisor said it was necessary, but Rafa knew, and it hurt. Even so, he kept showing up. He cleaned even harder, even without seeing Isabel. He missed her voice, the way she played with her hair, the looks that spoke louder than language. Isabel missed him too, but she was surrounded by handlers, contracts, pressure. David made a point of reminding her that any inappropriate involvement could ruin her image. But hearts don't follow rules. One night, when the theater was almost empty, Isabel snuck out of her hotel. She slipped in through the back, just like she used to. She found Rafa cleaning the dressing rooms. "I couldn't stay away," she said softly. He looked at her, surprised. Then he smiled. That kind of smile you can't fake or buy. A real smile. That moment, simple as it was, sealed something between them, something bigger than the world wanted to allow. But what neither of them knew was that the hardest test was yet to come. Chapter 2. The Weight of the Choice. The morning after their secret meeting, something had changed in Isabel's eyes. She arrived at rehearsal later, even though she knew David was furious about her disappearing act the night before. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't afraid to go off-script in her own life. While the tech crew adjusted the sound, she kept glancing toward the side of the stage with a flicker of hope. But Rafa wasn't there. Ever since his reassignment, he'd been cleaning the dressing room hallways. Still, Isabel quietly slipped down the stairs and went to find him. "Tonight, wait for me at the service exit. I want to show you something." Rafa nodded, surprised and nervous. That night after rehearsal, he waited. His heart pounded in his chest. When Isabel's black van pulled up, the back door opened slowly, and she reached out, pulling him in and covering him with a coat. They went somewhere simple, a small square in the Ipiranga neighborhood, where kids played soccer and street vendors shared space with young couples in love. They sat on a concrete bench. Isabel took off her cap, tied her hair back, and let out a deep breath. "When I'm with you, I feel like I can just be Issa. Not the star, not the product." Rafa held her hand, still shy. "And with you, I feel like I can be someone." They fell into silence. It was as if the world around them had paused, but the peace didn't last. The next day, photos of them together were leaked. Someone from the team had followed the van. Social media exploded. Headlines questioned Isabel's morals, labeled it a romance with a janitor, and online trolls made cruel jokes. David stormed into her dressing room, phone in hand. "Is this what you want? To ruin your career over some slum fantasy?" Isabel stood up slowly, steady. "Don't talk about him like that. He's worth more than a lot of people in this place." The argument was interrupted by a call from Rafa's mother. She was crying. Reporters were camped outside their home. Neighbors mocked them. His siblings were too ashamed to go to school. So, Rafa did what he thought was right. He vanished. He turned off his phone, stopped showing up at the theater, quit his job, left no message. For Isabel, it felt like someone had ripped a part of her out. Chapter 3. The Silence Between Us. Days went by, then weeks. The concert happened, sold out, but Isabel sang as if she were empty. Her smiles were rehearsed, her movements cold. Even under the lights, all she could see was darkness. Rafa, meanwhile, started working at a supermarket, stocking shelves. He kept his head down, avoided conversation. He felt ashamed, afraid, heartbroken. One afternoon, while pushing a cart full of boxes, he spotted a little girl singing one of Isabel's songs in the aisle. She was dancing awkwardly, grinning. It was his neighbor, Louisa. He smiled for the first time in days. That night, he listened to Isabel's songs again. Every lyric hurt, but it also healed. He missed her, but more than that, he missed who he was when he was with her. At the same time, Isabel made a bold decision. She cancelled the rest of the tour. Officially, she cited health issues, but the truth was deeper. She began visiting underserved communities in secret. She wanted to understand Rafa's world, to live what he had lived, During one of these visits, she met Donna Marta, his mother, at a local outreach event. Marta told her that Rafa had changed. He was quiet, withdrawn, but still kept a napkin in his room with the lyrics of a song Isabel had once written for him. Isabel cried when she heard that. The next morning, just before dawn, she sat alone at a piano in an empty studio. That's when she wrote Between Lights and Silences. The song spoke of two worlds that rarely meet, but whose hearts recognize each other. It was about Rafa. It was about her. She released the song a week later. No music video, no promo campaign, just a raw, simple video of her at the piano. It went viral, but Rafa didn't see it. He'd promised himself he wouldn't look for her again. Until one day, Louisa showed him the video on her phone and said, "This song sounds like you, Rafa." He watched, and he cried. On screen, Isabel stared straight into the camera, as if she were looking right at him, and in a way, she was. Chapter 4. What Remains, Even When It Leaves. It was on a cloudy morning, much like the one from the first rehearsal, when they saw each other again. Isabel was standing in the lobby of a cultural center on the outskirts of the city, about to donate instruments to a social project. Rafa was there by chance, accompanying a friend from the community. She saw him first. Her heart raced. She wanted to run to him, hold him, say that nothing had made sense without him. But she stood still. He saw her too. He walked toward her slowly, shy, but he didn't turn away. "You disappeared," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought it was for the best," he replied, looking into her eyes. There was silence, but this time it was a comforting one. "You changed my life, Rafa. You showed me the value of simple things. You taught me that real shine doesn't come from the stage, and you taught me how to dream big, even knowing not every dream is meant to last." She gave a sad smile. So did he. They walked through the square, remembered old moments, laughed, got emotional. But at the end of the walk, something lingered in the air. The quiet understanding that, no matter how strong the feeling, their paths were different now. Maybe what we had wasn't meant to last, but it was meant to change us, Rafa said. Isabel nodded. "And I'm not the same after you." She went back to her life. He went back to his. But neither life was ever the same. Months later, Rafa began teaching music to children in the community, and the song Between Lights and Silences became the theme of an award-winning documentary that inspired young people all over the world. As for Isabel, she began performing in smaller venues, in unexpected places. She found meaning in singing. Again, they never saw each other again, but they never forgot, because some loves don't end. They simply become eternal lessons. Enjoyed this story? Then subscribe to the Golden Words channel so you won't miss any others. Every day, we bring you touching and emotional stories. Leave a comment with the city and country you're listening from. Let's spread these stories worldwide.